And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. We've gone through nearly all the Rangers. I think we only got Billy and... Oh, God, what's the Black Ranger's name again? The Blue and Black Ranger. I think we've only got those guys left. But we're on to Trini Kwan, the original Yellow Ranger. My personal crush between the two Rangers. I mean, Kimberly's fine and all, but as growing up, I'm like, nah, I'm more down for Trini. But yeah, so... As the original Yellow Ranger, her power coin, and her symbolization in terms of the Zords was represented by the saber-toothed tiger Zord. So I knew that's where I wanted to start with her team. Immediate problem, though, there is no saber-toothed tiger Pokemon. I mean, you actually break down, including the one I have to represent here, there's some Pokemon that come close to a saber-toothed tiger, but are not saber-toothed tigers. If you're just looking at the cat-based Pokemon as it stands, I mean, it's very easy to see that things like Solgaleo and Pyroar are lions. Things like, obviously, Incineroar is a tiger. A Galarian Meowth is, and, Alolan Meowth are not saber-toothed tigers. The closest we have, like Luxray is maybe as close, but he doesn't have anything that designates him with the saber teeth. If you give him some saber teeth, maybe you can make a small argument, but the only Pokemon I feel comes as close to represent a saber-toothed tiger is Raikou. Now, him, Entei, and Suicune, or it, Entei, and Suicune, are the legendary beasts, but they are specifically called the legendary beasts. It's never actually fully stated what they are. They are like kind of an amalgamation of cat and dog-like traits. Suicune is allegedly based more on a leopard, whereas Entei is based more off a mastiff. In Suicune and Raikou here is arguably the most cat-like. He's got stripes similar to that of a tiger, and again, he has saber teeth like a saber-toothed tiger. So and the yellow helps to kind of liken him to someone like Trini, being the Yellow Ranger. So ultimately, I thought it was the right choice. But there's also her specific ranger weapon, daggers. There is no dagger Pokemon. At least nothing that I think is labeled the dagger Pokemon. But you know what? So I went with something that kind of has dagger-like claws. I went with Sneasel. I think Sneasel kind of works in this regard because its claws very much are quick and hit like daggers. But you know what? Let's see. The dagger Pokemon. Is there a dagger Pokemon yet? Dagger Pokemon. If there is, Honedge resembles a sword from me. They bring up like Honedge, but no, that's a sword. That's not a dagger. That's why I didn't go with Doublade, because like these are swords. They're not daggers. So yeah, for her to represent her daggers, I decided to go there. But then there was the transformation of the saber-toothed tiger Zord into the Thunder Zord Griffin, or the Griffin Thunder Zord. And again, we do not to date have a Griffin Pokemon, which boggles my mind that we don't have a Griffin Pokemon. So we have instead, I go with Savali. Savali is about as close to a Griffin I think you're going to get. At least on the front side of it. Yes, it doesn't have wings, but it is the most combination of beast and bird I can find in Pokemon. Plus, it also evolves through friendship, so I think that kind of works too. Trini is very close with her friends. She's very peaceful. She's usually the arbiter between her group of friends. And beyond that, she doesn't like to fight. She doesn't have to. So I do like the fact that so she has some friendship-based evolutions. To go with that, she's also an environmentalist, trying to save, protected areas, things along those lines. So I figured a grass-type Pokemon to help represent that would work out very well. I went with Blossom, because I haven't used Blossom yet on a Pokemon team, and Blossom is adorable. It's a little hula dancer with flowers. But to go more to the point that she is kind of she's also considered the second most intelligent on the team. I think we need an intelligent psychic type Pokemon with sensitive emotion, with empathy. So I went with Gardevoir for this. I think it's a good fit overall. And then finally, like the rest of them, she learns how to fight. Now, I don't believe she was a straight martial artist to begin with, like Tommy or Jason, but I do think, she did learn how to fight at some point. So what did I decide to go with there? Well, I decided to throw another new one in. I went with Lucario Z. Mega Lucario Z. I think it's just a very different design. It's got a little bit more of an Anubis vibe than normal Lucario does. And it also represents the whole Mighty Morphin Power Ranger thing. Again, why it has that shark tail, you see all that. We all see that. Why does it has that tail and not be a fighting water type? I have no idea. And so that's the dream. That's the dream. That's the dream. The Trini dream. That's the team for Trini Kwan, the Yellow Ranger. But the question, as always, how balanced is it? What is its strengths, weaknesses, and how well would it do in a playthrough? In terms of strength, it takes its biggest hits from fighting and fire types, as 3 Mon on this team are weak to both of them. Not at the same time, mind you, but they're both weak to fighting. So you have an ice, dark, a normal, and a steel fighting type. So it's weak to fire and fighting at the same. Well, sorry, it's weak to fighting. And then your Bellossom, your Sneasel, and your Lucario again are weak to fire. Now, by the by, I never change Savali's type whenever I put it on a team, because that's not the point of Savali whenever I put him on the team. Now, mind you, I could maybe in later videos decide, all right, let me pick a certain type of Savali to put on a team and make it fit better. I suppose that's fair, but it has to make sense within the context of the video. You know what I mean? Like, I'd have to go with someone who's like bending elements or something like that, using different elemental attacks or using something that fits one of the other types in order for that to make sense. Otherwise, your time's too weak to ground, to steel, to bug, and to poison. You are, however, times too strong against water, flying, dragon, ground, rock, and dark. But that's the biggest hurdle this team has. It has no real domination over any types. And that comes to bite it in the ass pretty hard, if I'm going to be honest. Now, let's get it out of the way. What regions do you not become champion in? And honestly, there's a good couple of them. You're not becoming champion in Paldea, due to the fact that you might get through all the gym leaders, but you're not getting past Rika. Rika being the ground type Elite Four member. The only thing you have type-wise that's going to hurt any of her team are Bellossom and Sneasel, and neither of them have the stats to put up a strong fight. Raikou is pretty much useless against a ground team. And so Lucario's steel typing makes it weak. So really that just leaves you with Gardevoir and Savali, and I don't think they're going to be able to hold off the assault, basically, for very long. Even if you could get to Gita, it would be a little bit of a fight to beat her, but I think you'd still be able to manage if you could get to her. Galar, frankly, I think you stop at Milo, because he has 2 Pokemon, one's fully evolved. Yes, you have Raikou, but Raikou is not one of the strongest legendaries around, and grass resists electric. So, yeah, I don't think that's likely. And honestly, this team is not well made to deal with Leon's team. The Aegislash alone, you have no answer for except for Sneasel. And Sneasel's so frail, it would go down before you ever get a chance to really do much to Aegislash. And then the Dragapult would, quite frankly, run rampant on the vast bulk of this team. Even against Gardevoir, it has Flamethrower, which fairies aren't weak to, but they don't deal with fire very well. Let's see here. And then in Kalos, you would frankly stop at Karina. This is due to the fact that even though Raikou's good against Hawlucha, the fact that it's a fighting gym and you have a normal type and a quad weak Sneasel means that those two are going down fast. Raikou's got to pick up all the slack, and by the time you maybe get to Hawlucha, Raikou is either going to be done or almost done, and then it's going to come speed in and hit it with a flying press. Diantha, you probably could beat, however, if you got to her, hypothetically. This is just due to the fact that her team is really not well handled to deal with something like a Lucario. And Mega Lucario Z is a bit more on the defensive side, so it has more bulk while still hitting pretty hard. And then we get into Unova, and you, frankly, could probably make it to the Elite Four and beat them. Mind you, you would have to deal with Berg, and Berg against Sneasel, Savali, and Raikou is a weird mix, but you could probably deal with it. The question is, could you beat the 2 champions, Iris and Alder? Iris, Yeah, it would be tough. But you swap in Gardevoir against the Hydreigon, quad take it out with a Fairy type move. Use her, and then, once Aggron comes in, you just kind of throw in Lucario, take out a bunch of her team, and I think, or Haxorus if that's the case. And I think you should be okay. But this team does not handle bug types well. Not only does it have two mon that are straight out weak to bug, it has no type advantage against bug. Which means the Selgor alone is problematic. It's going to be dealing a lot of damage without you doing anything super effective. Yes, Lucario can take care of two of his mon, no problem, with Vanillux and Buffalon, but then you got to deal with the Druddigon, you bring in the Gardevoir, then you got to deal with the Scavalier, which is going to be a tank and hit hard, and then if you somehow manage to get through that and haven't lost half your team, which you probably would have at this point, then you got to deal with the Volcarona, which you once again do not have a good answer for. The Fire Bug type is a decent typing offensively. It has Quiver Dance and Overheat and Bug Buzz. It is going to run rampant on your team. Rampant. So, no, I don't think you could beat Alder. All right, then what about Sinnoh? God, man, once you get to the Elite Four, it is a battle and a half. And that's assuming you can get past Rorik, of all things. Rorik actually wouldn't be easy. Raikou would only be at best level 17. It does have Bite, but that Cranidos would have Bulldoze depending on the game you have, which means it could take out Raikou with one hit. Hypothetically, even if you get past it, you would then have to deal with either Maylene in your original games, and her team could easily take out your team. Fighting type at that stage is not good for you. Or Fantina in the Platinum games, in which case Fantina, you're really not very well designed against. Yes, you do at least have Sneasel, and yes, I think Silvally should have Bite at that point, but that would still be a tough-ass match. And then you going into the Elite Four, Aaron. Once again, you have two mon on this team that are straight out weak to bugs. Gardevoir's neutral, thanks God, to the Fairy type because it resists bugs. But you have no strength against bugs at all. The only thing that you have an advantage, the only thing that's even remotely different on that team that you could maybe do something against is the Drapion, and that's just because it's not a bug, but it's a dark poison, so not even psychic type moves do a damn thing against it, or fairy moves. The only thing you could have is maybe a steel move on Lucario, and then you got to deal with Bertha, who's a ground trainer. You do have Sneasel, who's probably outspeeds just about everything on that team, to get at least one hit in, but unless you can KO something, which you're not doing with a Sneasel, it's going down. Bellossom might have some utility, but it's going down pretty quick. Raikou's useless against the bulk of her team. Sudowoodo is an exception, but otherwise, you're pretty much playing with half a deck on that team. Lucario can put some work in, but it's also weak to ground, so I don't think you're getting past either Aaron or Bertha. That's where you stop. And even if you did get to Cynthia, you're going to have to switch out Raikou automatically for Gardevoir to deal with the Spirit Tomb. Then the Rose Raid comes in, and you don't have an effective answer for that. I mean, yeah, you could switch into Sneasel, but you're either sacrificing a Sneasel or... No, you're sacrificing a Sneasel. Maybe it survives a Sludge Bomb or something like that. Maybe. But it doesn't have the stats to one-shot the Rose Raid. So that means you now have to deal with... Sneasel goes down. Bring in Lucario. Or to be fair, okay, hold on. You could bring in Lucario. It will be immune. Okay, that takes care of that. Then she brings in Gastrodon. You could make a choice here. You could keep the Lucario in, get some damage in, and then take it out with Bellossom. Because Bellossom's stats would not KO the Gastrodon, and that thing has Earthquake on it. So, that's a tough one. Or you could try to do what damage you can with Bellossom, and then come in with Lucario, and then Mega Evolve it to deal, whatever damage you need to against the Milotic. To be fair, though, you can then just swap out with Raikou, but then you still got to deal with the Lucario she has, and then you got to deal with Garch. Okay. In the long run, it is possible to beat her. It's a maybe. In fact, I'd say it's a fair maybe, but not an indefinite maybe. Hoenn. I basically said no, you could not beat... First off, I don't think you can beat Steven anyway. Again, team's not really designed for his weird mix of rock and steels. But beyond that, you're struggling out the gate with each gym leader. I mean, you struggle already a little bit with Roxanne, but that's not that big a deal. You have Bite, you can manage. you're in a bit of a spot when it comes to Brawley because he's going to quickly take down the Sneasel, no problem. So Raico's got to pull all the work. Watson's going to resist everything you have, so that's going to be a struggle. Flannery's going to be KO 2 of your Mon out the gate. That's a problem. And then you don't have a fighting type Mon until Lucario, so you can't use that to deal with Norman Slackings. Honestly, I don't think you could get through all of Hoenn with this team. Unless you started with Lucario, you're kind of boned. And even then, you'd still have to deal with Brawley, at least in the early match. So, yeah, I don't think you could. Now, that all being said, while I think you struggle in Kanto and Johto, I also think those are the regions you have your best shot in. And in fact, I think you could become champion in both games. That said, Sabrina's going to be your first big obstacle in Kanto. One Sneasel that's immune is not going to cut it. Fortunately, though, you do have Gardevoir, who's a Psychic, so you're kind of just neutral to each other. Raikou still legendary, got legendary stats. Savali's still also technically legendary. You should be able to manage. Blaine would be another problem because 3 of your Mon are weak to fire. Giovanni would be a problem because it's immune to at least one of your Mon and then resist the bulk of the other ones. And then you have to deal with Blue, which, frankly, the Elite Four you're going to get through very quickly. Blue, his Pidgeot comes out first. You take that out. You can swap in the Sneasler to avoid psychic damage. Just deal some dark damage. Let it just go down, assuming it goes down. Swap in for Lucario. That KOs the Rhydon. Then you got a Fire Grass or Water Threat. If it's the Water Threat, you just bring out the Raikou, deal with it. If it's Gyarados, it's quad weak. If it's the Fire Threat, that one you're going to have to pick your battles a little bit more carefully. You could still go Raikou, or, in my opinion, go Savali. It's neutral, but you'll probably be able to get enough damage. And if it's the Grass Threat, well, then you just got to either go with Sneasel, well, assuming it's still around, or assuming it is Venusaur, you could just go Gardevoir and just, boom, take it down. Honestly, the trickiest one to deal with that entire lot would probably be Exeggutor, because it's Grass Psychic. But yes, you can become champion with Kanto. And in Johto, Whitney's still problematic in Johto. That Sneasel will go down quick. That rollout gets going. You're in trouble even with evolved Pokemon or legendary Pokemon. But it's not impossible you could take her down. Weirdly enough, I think Chuck would be a bit problematic too. And you'd be saying, why? You should have Gardevoir at this point, right? And I got to remember what the level is on that. Actually, I think that is the case. You should have Gardevoir, so I have to change my mind. Chuck's fine. Jasmine, though, could be a little problematic. But you have Lucario now at that point, so you should be fine. Price is no problem. Honestly, Claire is no problem. Will is a little problematic, but doable. You can manage Will. I think Karen is also pretty easy. Same with Bruno. Honestly, same with Koga. Even though the fighting is a 3 times weakness on this team, the fact that you have Gardevoir on the team, which is basically a fighting type killer, is very good. But the question, what about Lance? Well, I said I think you can beat him, and I do stand by that. Mind you, he starts with Gyarados, so you could probably take it out with Raikou, but the Intimidate getting off on that Gyarados is going to be a problem. Still, I think you can take it down. In fact, you could probably take down the first 3 Mons, no problem. Dragonite resists electricity, so that's when you throw in Gardevoir, and basically just hope that you take it all down with Gardevoir. That said, as long as you take down the fire one, you can bring out Mega Lucario, and that should be able to duke it out for a while. And Savali's at least going to be neutral. I do think you can beat Lance. So I don't think it's the bulk, I don't think it's the majority, but I think you're fine. I think this team can do fine for what it is. But this is just my opinion after all. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one.